Hey, welcome back to Between the Notes podcast. We have a really wonderful, exciting, special episode for you today. Lots of my favorite people are on this on the screen right now, and essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what it is to be a voice teacher, and this is kind of aiming towards the Westminster Voice Pedagogy Institute, which will happen this summer. It's also kind of in that is part of the greater master's program, which I'm a very proud alumnus, of Andy Rini is as well. And so we have Dr. Kathy Price with us, and friend of the pod, Jon Price, is back. So Weston, I'm going to let you kick this one off since I got you to introduce everybody and get the conversation rolling.
Yeah, I'll say this. I remember the first time that I was tasked to teach a voice lesson. I had auditioned to go to graduate school at Indiana University, and I was very fortunate enough to receive one of their top scholarships, which included an associate instructorship. And so you got all these great benefits with, like, parking stickers where you could park in the same lot as the faculty. You could get that, but you also had to teach voice lessons. And at the time, I really didn't have a clue what to do. And I think that, you got to start somewhere. And I think it's such a wonderful opportunity to sort of have a roundtable discussion uh, with other voice teachers and singers themselves to understand what it is that, look, I don't know a single singer out there who doesn't have a side gig of some kind. And I think that if you're pursuing singing, chances are you might be teaching voice lessons to a high school student, or chances are you might be teaching to a college student, or working with young artists, or whatever it might be. And I think it's always a good idea to be, let's say, caught up on, just the things that are going to be helpful, the things to maybe stay away from, the things that are going to be um, rudimentary, basic level things that everyone should know. So yeah, I think that that's what this conversation will hopefully answer some questions for. Yeah.
Totally. Actually, my mom's got a pretty phenomenal first day of teaching story that she often shares at the beginning of VPI. So I feel like if you haven't heard it, you should.
Let's hear it, Kathy.
Let's hear it. Let's go.
So I had just got my master's from University of Maryland, College Park, yay, at Terps. I was 23, I think, at the time, and I had never taught a voice lesson in my life, right? Like you were saying, Weston. And Northern Virginia Community College, Alexandria campus, which is right outside DC, which has a lot, their student body is mostly adults, not like typical college age students, because there's so many government workers and military people and bands and the military courses and stuff that come there to that campus to take classes and lessons. And so anyway, that campus had called University of Maryland and asked them to recommend someone to come and teach for them for this that coming fall. And they recommended me and another student, and we were no longer students, we just graduated. I went. They didn't ask me to do anything. This is how long ago it was. They just talked to me, but because I had that recommendation, they just hired me. And so the first day I get my roster of my students, and the first day I had 14 lessons.
14 lessons in one day.
In one day.
Four.
They weren't all hours. Some were hours, some were half hours, depending on whether they were majoring in, music or not. But 14 lessons. And
wow.
so at that point, and in a practice room, of course. So I go into the practice room, little bitty practice room, and person after person is singing for me, as the day goes along. And for every single person, I have them start by just singing a song they brought. And I am playing for them. And while they're singing, I'm thinking, I think they sound pretty good. And not only do I think they sound pretty good, but they're going to expect me to say something when they stop singing. I got to come up with something, right?
Right.
And so I would start with something that I kind of observed, and then we kind of go from there. And I managed to get through the day. So by the next week, the same 14 people, of course, are coming back. And as they sing, all I can hear is what's wrong with them. I think, oh, well, there's this and there's that, and what in the world? And they can't do this and they can't do that. And I thought, wait a minute, I cannot tell them that they have all these things wrong. I've got to think of one thing that's really, and nobody really taught me that. I never took a pedagogy course or anything like that, except one class at University of Maryland, which was more of a voice science kind of thing, which I was delighted to get. But we
You
didn't
made up for
practice.
that later.
Yeah,
Right.
We didn't practice teach. So anyway, within a month, I was on a healthy balance of what's good and what isn't, what needs some help, right?
So maybe
But
as we think about that, like right off the bat, the first thing is, if you hear 1,000 mistakes, pick one,
pick
and
something.
pick something and work on that. And if you're not sure what else to work on, pick something and go with it and see how far it takes you.
Pick something you know well, that you understand personally really well, whether it's, their alignment, or everybody can improve, right? These elemental things that we all do. And so pick something and go for it. My doctoral mentor and advisor at the University of Kansas, Jim Doherty, he would call it the it. You've got to figure out what it is. What is the thing that you're going to start with, and then try to stick to it. And what I found was, if you center it on one thing and it gets better, then that peels away one layer of the onion. And now we see the other 6 things, but we don't have 7 anymore that we have to address. And so you pick something else, or something else gets better because of the thing you fixed, right?
Yeah.
So if the alignment's off, then maybe the phonation isn't so good, or something. So you have to kind of go through each of those stages in your mind while complimenting, and always find something good to say, because it's easy to criticize. And everybody who's just been vulnerable enough to stand in front of you and sing by themselves, when they haven't done that before, especially.
Yeah.
But even if they have, it's the first time for you, and you're their new teacher. They are looking for affirmation, right? They're looking for you to find something that you enjoyed about their performance, whether it is how beautiful their voice is, or how well they held their head, or the smile they had on their face when they finished.
Sure.
They can be the worst thing you've ever heard in your life, but you can
Can
find
you imagine?
something.
I could just imagine somebody coming in and singing the Guillaume Tell's Cabaletta or whatever there. And then it'd be, wow, the smile you have on your
You're so
When
relieved
you
that
knew
it's
when you
over.
knew it was over.
Right,
It's like,
exactly.
it was so
I love
reflective
it.
of the joy they had in singing that aria,
That's so great. That's
There's
so
always
great.
something.
So there's
so
there's
let's-
no excuse for
go
not
ahead.
finding something.
Right, right, exactly.
That's
Well,
right.
since I think this is going to be a great intro and into, I mean, it's already a great intro into more of like what VPI is and why is that something that is out there. I mean, obviously, as we said, it's a part of the Masters of Voice Pedagogy at Westminster, but it's a wonderful continuing education opportunity for singers and teachers of all levels. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about the John is the co-director, right? Kathy?
Yep, I'm the
Right?
co-director.
Okay, so
That's a relatively recent phenomenon. My mom has been with it as the director since the beginning.
right, that's awesome. And so tell us, kind of walk us through the week, and kind of an overview and how you and Mark Moliterno, who are kind of y'all are the permanent faculty or right, and then you bring
We call it the
in
resident faculty.
great, yes, exactly, and so then you bring in. Well, you tell us, John.
Yeah, sure. So the way that we often explain this to people, and maybe we can get a taste of it here, is we think that we ought to be your first stop. If you're like, maybe I'm a singer in the middle of a career. Maybe I'm a coach who's looking to augment what I'm doing. Maybe I'm a choral conductor or whatever else it is. I think I might want to teach voice lessons, or I find that I'm already teaching voice lessons and I feel like I could be a little bit more informed. you should come to us first. We'll give
Okay.
you a taste of a lot of what's out there in
Right.
a manageable but also detailed way. So first day, we affectionately call it a pedagogy boot camp, and it's where you get essentially a little bit of a knowledge dump. You'll also get presentations and things to take home and try to absorb it a little more. But we try to do a couple things. We try to give you information about alignment, anatomy, about acoustics, and then we also want to make sure that we do at least a little bit of actual teaching. So we'll have a couple of sample lessons up so that you can see how to balance a lesson. What are typical things that come up in a lesson? And we do that, and through the end of the first day. And then we have 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that each have a theme. So this year, Tuesday is going to be vocal health. And we're going to have Dr. Wendy Laborn, who is the co-author of the book, The Vocal Athlete, is a SLP and a researcher, is also on faculty at CCM, amongst other places, works with a lot of different folks, but is a sort of a voice trauma specialist. Her idea is something terrible has happened. She gets a phone call and has to come in and do some damage assessment and figure out how do we go from here. So she's going to talk a little bit about working with injured voices and how to work from injury through rehabilitation into recovery. Wednesday, I believe, is going to be Dr. Nick Perna for a day of classical pedagogy, so
Great.
focusing on classical singers. Nick is the president-elect of the NATS National Organization and is also head of the pedagogy program at CU Boulder. And we'll be doing a morning of lecture and then an afternoon of application. We have a thing called a look-in lesson where basically someone teaches a lesson in front of you and shares their inner monologue. And then Thursday is Jared Trudeau, who is a musical theater voice teacher, runs an organization called Broadway Vox here in Manhattan, and teaches a ton of people who are on Broadway and also does teacher training for a lot of folks who are wanting to do both musical theater and also commercial music specialty. And then Friday is Yoga Voice Day. And that's with Mark Moliterno, and it's a chance to kind of do something that's a little bit more deliberately in the body. And so we
Yes.
do some yoga sessions together, and there's singing and kind of the idea of you can actually address a lot of vocal issues via putting people into yoga postures and having them sing in those postures and experiencing the change physically when those sorts of things happen. And throughout the week, we have morning sessions where we're breaking down any questions that might have come up. We have chances to talk about, little topics here and there, adolescent and changing voices,
What's our
how to
little
manipulate a
topic?
vocalese. Yeah, lots of things. Yeah, so that's
Oh,
what
yeah,
I mean. We touch a lot of things as deeply as we can, and then we keep moving. So that is the week in a nutshell.
And
It's
if
great.
you are,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy. No, you.
I just want to add this one more thing. If you are an established voice teacher, we have voice teachers who already teach in college who come, as well as classroom teachers, choral directors in high school and college, and community and large churches, et cetera, et cetera. But you will, I think you'll find it renewing and comforting that you do know some things, and you know a lot of things actually,
Yeah.
but there are many more things that maybe have taken a little turn or developed further since the last time you had education in it. So you get a nice refresher. But it really becomes a community throughout the week because we do everything together. It's not you divide up and go here and here and here, depending on your interests. That's a great model as well, but it's not this model. This model
Right.
is we're together, whether it's synchronously attending or in-person attendance. We put everybody in the room together and we record all that and we deliver it to everybody every evening. So even the people
All over the world, really.
all over the world.
Yeah.
And so even people taking asynchronously, like people who live on the other side of the world and can't stay up all night, they also feel a part of things and can participate.
Yeah, I mean, I did it twice while I was doing my master's, and I think Irini did it twice. And she would have it on the laptop while, either in the kitchen or
I remember.
yeah. And so, I mean, like, I just feel like every time, and one of my favorite, I mean, I can't pick favorites, but I am caffeinatedly inclined. And so the caffeinated clarifications, which is kind of the first 30 or 45 minutes in the morning where everybody's having their coffee and people get to bring up topics from the previous day or the days that have gone before, and just kind of talk about, well, what okay, so I got this far, but I kind of got lost here. Can we go back and kind of clarify that? And it's just a really interesting, wonderful week to spend. And as you said, everybody kind of gets to know each other, because there's a view of the presenter who's speaking at the time. There's also a view of everyone who's in the classroom. And it's great. And as you said, there are so many different kinds of people in different places. A lot of performers, as you said, who want to go back and get credentialed and also have the knowledge, to feel like they really, when they stand in front of a singer, that they're, and I think this is a good segue into the next part of the conversation, right? Is that and Wes and I were talking about this earlier. Lots of times, the first time we give a voice lesson, it's like, well, I've been taking voice lessons for over 10 years, maybe longer. So just do that. And, okay, that's a great way to start. I think we all start that way. But, one of the big things that I learned, and I'd love to hear everybody's opinion on this, is, I think that sometimes, depending on how many different teachers you've had at that point, how many different approaches have you had, all these kinds of things that, essentially what I'm getting at the punchline here is, I no longer just say what I know works for me. I try to address the singer that is in front of me and try and imagine myself, if I had their voice, what would I need to do in order for it to get better, as opposed to just saying, well, this is what I was taught, and if it doesn't work for you, then you're not talented enough.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Which is the surprisingly popular approach.
I was about to say, I know that none of us are doing that, but I also know that we know people who are totally doing that.
Well, and I think that, I will fully admit that one of my biggest downfalls is what Kathy was talking about before at the very beginning, where, in this mindset of like, okay, well, you're paying me for your time. Let's jump right in. Okay, let's try to fix this. Okay, you're doing this wrong. Okay, let's talk about this. The diction is just not where it needs to be. Let's talk about this. And all of a sudden, you do forget to be like, yeah, you have a gorgeous voice. Okay, yeah. Yeah,
right.
Of course,
Right,
you're doing a
right.
lot of things right. Well, like what? What am I doing right? Because I think that affirmation really does help let them
Sure.
know, okay, so that not everything I'm doing is terrible.
Right.
Right, absolutely. And that what you said, Brian, a second ago about teaching the person in front of me, that warms the cockles of my heart, because I always say, teach the person in front of you.
Yeah.
Don't teach the method. Not that methods aren't helpful. It's
Sure.
great to know about different styles and methods of teaching, and it'll bring you all kinds of ideas, right, that maybe you wouldn't have come up with on your own. But you have to see what is happening there. And as you say, Weston, when you affirm something, then they know they did that well, and they won't try to change that, right? Because if you don't tell them what they're doing right, they're going to just take the whole thing apart,
Right.
And there are certain things you say, this was really great, this needs a little more adjusting, but it's on the right track, and now let's look at this, and then
One of the things that I found, I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that I found to be so incredibly helpful as a teacher was that when the student, now I'm talking about young professionals or let's say graduate students, but when they would walk in for a lesson, I would oftentimes ask them, yeah, so hey, great, a little small talk, whatever, but then like, so what did you want to work on today? And getting that feedback from the student, like, yeah, this week I've been really struggling with finding like how my, through the upper passaggio, like I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like sometimes it works. All right, great. Let's start there. You know what I mean? Like sometimes just being cognizant of the fact that the person in front of you does have a brain, and they might know a little bit about what they're having trouble with.
Well, they
what
might.
You could
They
help
might.
them with.
They might.
I-
They might
They
have a
also
brain.
sometimes they have a brain, and sometimes they have a preoccupation.
Yeah.
Sometimes the thing they identify is absolutely where we need to work. But it's also important, if someone thinks something's a problem, then even if you're pretty sure that's not where the actual problem is, you should probably not just say, "Oh, that's not your problem. It's this."
Right.
It's like, "Oh, great. I hear that. Can we just like go over here and try this for a second? Okay, let's see. This might be fruitful for us. Let's go here." And
Yeah.
sort of establishing that it's collaborative, I think is really, really important. But Weston, I totally relate to that idea of like trying to give someone value and feeling like, oh, well, if I'm going to be a good teacher, it's because I've made the biggest difference in this person over the time here. And really, it's like, that's not, if you think back to my own voice lessons, that's not how I measure my own voice lessons. Like that person really pointed out a lot of things I was doing wrong. And like,
Right.
I felt like, I figured out all sorts of things that I need to work on. No, it's like, oh, they didn't have a single like bad thing to say about it. Thought that I was doing great. As a singer, that's a wonderful like feeling voice lesson. Now you probably don't want too many of those, otherwise you probably need to find somebody new to work with. But I do think that, as teachers, sometimes we forget what it's like to be a singer and just to what what you're looking for in a voice lesson.
Yeah.
That's a great kind of like, looking on the other side of the curtain kind of thing that, what John and I and Weston and I, and, that's why I'm so excited that we can add Kathy and all be talking about this together, because I just think it's so fascinating kind of philosophy and the pedagogical aspect of how, Weston and I were talking about something earlier today about, there are different ways to get somebody to round a vowel, right? He and I have very similar personalities, and so we're like, oh, just think it's all round vowel. It works for us. It doesn't work for everybody. Some people say, oh, put the umlaut in the, as you're going up for that note right there. And I was like, well, what is that? Okay, I don't know why somebody says that to use an umlaut, but what it does is it rounds and releases the larynx down very often if you're doing it the right way and gets height. So all good things. But there's a personality of the student that, I think that oftentimes they're just like, oh, this is a famous teacher with such and such students, and da 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 da. Well, that doesn't mean that person is going to be the right teacher for you. Because if you don't have a similar personality, the way you're approaching how to balance a voice and how to solve, parts of a piece or parts of the voice that are not working out, or a certain vowel is not sitting right. There are all kinds of different ways to do that. So yeah.
Well,
One of the things that
go ahead, Mom.
I was just saying, one of the things that drove me to go back to school. I'd always wanted to go back to school, but it just never worked out. Life was too, packed with everything that I had to do in my life. And then eventually an opening happened when we moved out to Kansas City, and I encountered I signed up for a voice science course because I had never really taken an updated voice science course since that long ago 23-year-old girl, 22 at that time, sitting in a voice ped class at University of Maryland for one semester. But for me, I wanted to find what I was lacking, right? And I knew I was lacking that kind of understanding. I had not kept up with voice technology or voice research because I had been, singing and teaching and raising a family and handling, some serious health issues. And so I didn't really get around to that. But I felt the hole deeply. I felt embarrassed inside myself. Sometimes I could hear that this was better than this, but for me to be able to always know why that got better and to know why I asked the student to do what they did that perhaps produced what I wanted or what I thought they wanted, or perhaps didn't. I had a good ear and a good sense of things and sort of an intuitive sense, but I did not have that background knowledge in how does the voice actually work? What's actually going on in there? What's all the
Kathy, I think I've got you beat on this because when I I had one semester of vocal pedagogy myself from my undergraduate degree, and then fast forward to 2011, and I got hired to go teach at the University of Wisconsin, and it was told to me that I would be teaching vocal pedagogy. And I was
I
like,
love it.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Am I?
Yeah, I was teaching 24 students, 24 private students, plus teaching vocal pedagogy in the fall, and I was the opera director in the spring. It was
Oh
like,
my
Gosh.
goodness.
okay, sure, this is in my wheelhouse. All righty, here we go.
So you got the
But yeah, I
textbook
know that.
and you read it.
I got the textbook. I read the textbook. I was like,
You
all right,
outlined
here's the
it.
thing.
You came up with your lessons. Yep.
I
You
mean,
can do
I
it.
wish I could go back and apologize to every one of those students and just, but it,
I know that feeling, yes, especially that first group of voice lessons I taught.
My
But yeah,
goodness.
no, I hear you. And um, but it's so funny because everybody at Westminster now thinks of me as the voice science person, that kind of thing. And
Right.
actually, I was always a performer and a traditional teacher, really. And but it was because I went back to get my doctorate specifically in that to fill in the gaps, right? And to
PhD, not
PhD,
DMA. Thank you
yes,
very much.
PhD in voice pedagogy, to get that knowledge and not to feel inadequate.
Right.
I mean, it was partly for me, right? But it was mostly because I just really wanted to be a better teacher, and I can
Well,
say
kudos to
honestly,
you for doing that. I mean, that's
well,
amazing.
thank you, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
I was 50 when I started my
Wow.
doctorate, and
Yeah.
Well,
people
it's never
say,
too late.
yeah, it's not too late. And I know people in their 60s right now thinking, I even know somebody in her 70s who's considering going back to get a doctoral degree. So,
I
and
mean,
when you do it that
yeah,
way, it's probably more for you,
sure.
right? To satisfy that desire, that sort of that dream that you may have always had and never had the opportunity to.
Lifelong learning, right? I mean, it's a
There you go.
wonderful
Absolutely. And we live
thing.
longer and we work longer. So,
Yeah.
it's okay. Do it. Do it if you want to do it. Now, even then I had people at University of Kansas, not in my immediate world, but just around the edge,
Hmm.
asking me why I was, taking the place of a younger person who should be
What?
there instead of me. Oh
Excuse
yeah.
me.
Wow.
Yeah. It happens all the time. Yeah.
Ageism? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
And just
Ageism.
general
Wow.
entitlement, you
Yeah.
know.
And of course, it was a younger man speaking to me, but not a young man, just a younger man. But anyway, these things still exist,
Yeah.
and but anyway, that's another whole
Well,
topic.
I just want
But
to
you've
say, I
also had
mean,
a
like,
gigantic
go
career
ahead,
in
John.
academia since then, which is really it's like that idea that it isn't
I was
just
so
a
fortunate.
like you've been able to teach the vast majority of the time at Westminster Choir College, but also
Hmm.
you're running the program at Mississippi State.
I
Of
loved
course,
that
all
year.
sorts of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian,
Right.
go
Right after I
you
got it. Go
go
ahead,
for
No,
it.
no,
Brian.
I was just gonna say, like, I think, that we've all kind of come to that realization at different times in our lives. That's like, okay, well, we had a great education and a talent and an aptitude to be able to get us to a certain point. But that, for all of us to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go back and learn some more things, because I felt the same. I felt the same way. I mean, I felt that, pedagogy and all this kind of stuff. I mean, Weston's being very modest right here because he knows a whole bunch of stuff. Because before I met you guys, we would talk about this kind of stuff around his pool while our kids were swimming and having fun, and we get straws out and do all kind of good stuff.
Well, let's
But
say
like
this: the
what?
information that I've learned, I was very, very, very fortunate to have great teachers along the
Yeah,
way. And I
yeah.
and I say this, I think about the lineage that I've had since, let's say, my freshman year of college. I only had four teachers, and each one of those, while they weren't at the time the complete full understanding. I mean, who is, at any given moment the full thing that whoever the person standing in front of you needs? But it was. I look back on it and I think that's my first teacher gave me exactly what I needed at the time that I needed it, as did the second teacher, as did the third, and then my current teacher, Stephen King, I feel like sort of like took all of that and rounded it out in a way and describes his philosophy of singing in such that for me it just finally it seemed like I had like the pieces of the puzzle all kind of came together. And so while I don't consider myself to be some kind of like master pedagogy teacher by any means, I do feel like I have a good solid understanding how the voice works, and I'm able to talk about things. As once we get off into the science, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to
Right,
learn,
right.
but yeah,
Well,
Well,
and yeah, I just was going to say that I felt just like Kathy, like what you were saying. It's like I just felt like anytime somebody would talk pedagogically, I was either met with, like you said, kind of embarrassment that I don't even have really much of a frame of reference to talk about, and then also people who have now, there's this rift between the famous there can be, at least, between famous voice teachers who are like, what are they doing with all these straws and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
to where it's like you're like, well, that's not my camp. I'm not in the pedagogy camp. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, we're all sitting here,
All in it, and
you
we're
know,
all
and
in all of it. Yeah.
and you know, I understand now the line from the, and it's like, well, to be this, you know, kind of cult like camps going on, you know,
Yeah.
if that
there's
doesn't float your boat, great.
And there's a sense of like scope of practice, right? Like, so you talked about like laryngologist is there, you know, when you have an actual injury, and an SLP is there to help with
Yes, yeah.
rehabilitation and to help kind of get things back on track. And I think a lot of times the role of someone in that pedagogy degree is someone to help you work through things that aren't functioning quite correctly in your voice. That there's something that is either out of balance or that needs an adjustment in order to function in a way that feels more like it is a complete instrument. And then somebody who's really had a career and who is steeped in the repertoire can really get in there and deal with it much more in terms of what is the specific vowel shape you might want to sing there? What's the color? How do you manage this? And I think for most of us, we can wear multiple hats. Maybe you have one primary hat that's like, okay, this is where I live most of the time. Well, a thing I like to say a lot is that I feel like 90% of the people I teach don't need me. They just need a competent voice teacher. And so in those moments, I'm there as a competent voice teacher. I say, you know,
Right.
like, I'm going to do the things that probably 90% of people who know what they're doing would do exactly some version of the same thing. And then there are those rare moments when you get to really be your full self and say, you know what, that person really needs me in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, my specific expertise and experience is exactly what that person needs. So let me be present for that. But for the most part, like, most of the time, we just need to be a good, competent professional.
Yeah.
The reason I brought up that whole thing, just to kind of
Sure.
put a little cap on why I brought up the whole thing about doctoral work, is because I think that's what VPI and maybe a master's degree in general is intended to be. And at the beginning, Brian, you talked about VPI, or maybe John, it was you, I don't remember, being a good continuing ed kind of place. And that is indeed what it is intended for primarily, is a continuing education, because we've had such wonderful experiences with guest faculty just being unbelievably generous with their time and their expertise, as well as Mark and Jonathan and I. And we also have other assistants, like for the lab and for our technology and things like that. But because we've got this great team of people with these wonderful guests that we enjoy every year and from whom we all learn too, it became very popular, you know, not just as a continuing ed thing. And the school decided we really need to offer this as part of our curriculum. For sure, all the people doing the online degree of Master of Voice Pedagogy need to take this. And we also encourage, of course, all of our master's students to take it. And some of our undergrads, if they are, you know, seniors or something, can get special dispensation to be there. But it's not really for them. It's for the teachers. It's for and our faculty come too.
Yeah.
You know, when we have our guests and stuff, they come in to see what's going on. And I'd forgotten until you talked about that a moment ago, Brian, that you've only taken it online, right? You've only been
I've never been able to be there in person.
Because even the
Yeah.
year we had you do some stuff, it was an online experience because of COVID. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of one of the tricky things. Talk about life throwing us curveballs and all this kind of stuff that, you know, probably without COVID, I don't know that I would have been able to do this, or you know what I mean? Like if I was still singing and working all the time, I wouldn't have had the amount of time to do the work, because I mean, yes, it is an online degree, but it's rigorous. I mean, they're not handing you a piece of paper that you're just paying for. There's a lot of work to be done, and
let's say this for the people who might not be so familiar with it.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the platform that it's presented on, and how is it that what kind of hours, if you're doing it live, let's say if you live in the United States and you're able to, be present
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Jonathan, why don't you talk about it?
Yeah,
Because you're the
sure.
one who does all that technology.
Yeah, sure. So specifically, so we're kind of talking about both the Voice Pedagogy Institute, which is a week long thing in July. That's this year. It's July 20th through 24th, and then also talking about the Master of Voice Pedagogy degree. Voice Pedagogy
I can talk about that,
Institute.
but
Yeah, Voice Pedagogy Institute. So the whole thing, if you're coming on, in person, it's in a classroom. It's a very nice classroom, but it's
And
a
this is on the
classroom
Rider University
on the
campus.
Rider University campus in Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
Of which
If you
Westminster Choir College is a part.
yeah, and
Right.
if you want the full experience, you can even come and stay in a dorm, and
There you
know,
go.
and eat at the cafeteria. You can also get a hotel or stay with a friend. And whatever level of experience and expense you wish to have, but you can audit the whole week for I think $600, which
There's
is
no think it is $600.
which is ridiculous compared to like a lot of the other comparable things. It's 5 full days, a lot of information, and then you can also take it for graduate credit at the university's rate. So that's a thing you can do if you are wanting to use it toward a degree. But you'll take it if you are taking it synchronously, so at the same time, but somewhere else in the country, somewhere else in the world, you'll get a Zoom link. So you'll come in on the Zoom link, and I'll be responsible for miking everybody up and miking the room, also having multiple camera angles so that you can see what's going on. And we have a big screen that we put the whole Zoom screen on in the room so that everybody who is presenting and everybody who's in the room sees everybody who's online everywhere else in the world, and you can unmute to ask a question. You can fully participate if you're able to do it at the same time. And then if you're doing it asynchronously, we'll send the recordings of the day. And we've had many people say that experience of doing it asynchronously is still very, very engaging, and you get to have a really three-dimensional experience there. And then we have a chat via Discord, which is an app that allows you to have a pretty layered type of conversation that everybody participates in. So that's kind of the basic experience. But we work really hard for it to be as three-dimensional and participatory as possible, no matter how you're joining us.
And the people who take it for credit, I do have 3 assignments that they have to fulfill beyond being, be present every day. But I give everybody the rest of the month to essentially to get those in. Just has to be in before I have to get my grades in so that I have time to do that.
Yeah, and there's super fun assignments like labs, where you're using Voce Vista and you're doing different kinds, you're playing with, different colors and twang and all these kinds of different things that I just was like, oh wow, that's super fun. They're
Yeah,
like
is it all drudgery?
Yeah, no. I mean, none of it is. It's just a lot at once. Really, I just think that
It's a
the
big week.
information
Yeah.
dump, especially in the first day. If you've never, I remember the first day that I took it, I was like, how am I going to make it through this? Like, I can't. I don't know.
We've
what to do.
lightened it a little bit since you
I
did.
mean, maybe a little
Yeah,
bit,
a little bit.
but it's just great. I mean, it's not that it's so much information; it's just so much new information to someone who has never taken an anatomy, voice science kind of course
I was
there.
going to say, in my mind, vocal pedagogy class is where they give you a piece of paper with the larynx on there and little lines that are outside, and you go, oh, okay, that's the hyoid bone. Oh, okay, that's
Right.
and you fill all that in and you memorize
work
it,
your way
and then
down.
They give you the same piece of paper that's all blank, and you have to write them all in.
We did
This
fun
is something
things.
a little bit more involved and different than
Yeah.
There's a few
But we
more
did-
things happening, and it's a little more interactive.
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Yeah, and I
Good.
really do think our goal is, and our theme this year is practical voice pedagogy. So the idea is we want you to have the information because really the more you understand about what's happening, the more fun you're going to have because you're going to have more confidence. And there's this concept called body mapping, which basically means that the closer the idea you have about what's happening aligns with what's actually happening, the more successful your choices are going to be. So the better and more detailed a picture you have in your own mind of what you're doing, the better chance it is that you're actually going to be able to help the person in front of you. And that's what this is all in service of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you want to take it to that other step, we have both a resident Master of Music, program where you get to perform and take voice lessons, you do all the things that we think about doing and do research. And you can be in the Presser Voice Lab, because we have an actual voice lab there, one of the older ones in the country, and there are not as many anymore. A lot of universities have stopped having them, which is a tragedy. But at any rate, it's a great experience to be on campus. But also, if you are a person who's already working, has a family, doesn't live in the New Jersey, New York, or nearby Pennsylvania area, you can't easily just be on campus. We have this, what I think is a wonderful online degree, which is the Master of Voice Pedagogy. And that's what Brian did, and Irini, and so many of our wonderful people. I just talked with one of our participants today from last year, and she just got her first assistant tenure track position at a university.
That's great.
Was hired like today, and or yesterday, I don't know which, but it was one of those two. And she was, being so appreciative. She did our MVP degree, and she came to VPI last summer.
Wow.
So take the Master of Voice Pedagogy degree, and you too could be on the faculty of the Jacobs School at IU.
That's right.
Well, and our star pupil, yes, exactly.
Well, if I may, I don't want to go too much longer, because I know Weston's got a rehearsal, and I don't want to keep you guys from dinner. But I just feel like I very happily am just such a big advocate for this MVP program. Sorry, my allergies are just killing me right now. Having moved to Bloomington, and that's why somebody was telling me today, is like the reason why you're dying is because so it's hitting you so hard is just because you're not used to the allergens that are here. And so like really, I'm surprised I've made it this long without it, like my feeling like I'm just going to sneeze my head off. Anyway, the point being is that you do pedagogy courses, of course, so voice science, and then you do methods. Right, Kathy? Is that the other?
Methods, or if you're doing the musical theater track, you take a seminar in musical theater pedagogy.
And that's important to say, too. There are two tracks. There's the classical track and the musical theater track. And that's great,
we're
because
considering another track, but we haven't gotten there yet in commercial music. Yeah. We're not quite there yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so but we take that, but we also have to take, there are core curriculums. I had to take an arts administration class, which famously was the only class I did not get an A in, which I got a B plus, but not an A. 1 point away. But anyway, that's how it went. But then we did the oh gosh, Kathy, what's the one that we did with Sharon Merchandani? The kind of
intro to musicology.
To musicology, right? This is where if you're interested in doing this, you can do a whole heck of a lot of it, in the research and Journal of Singing, you get things published and all this kind of stuff. This was, I mean, it was a wonderful class. I thought of it almost like as a world music class, because there were so many different things, but. For instance, I did a paper on the, first time that a high C was chested by Gilbert Dupré, and that whole thing with Nourri and French and Guillaume Tell. And it just made a lot of sense, because it also I was able to tie in things I had known from the stage into things of knowing from a more musical, historical kind of way. And it was super duper fun. Some of the other classes we have are teaching practicum, right?
Well, there's a teaching internship. It's called, which is not exactly what it sounds like. There is a teaching practicum for the Master of Music people, but that's because they probably haven't taught yet.
Right.
For the people who are already teaching, we do more of an observing of other teachers and trying to figure out what their pedagogy is, what their methodology is.
Yeah, and one of the courses that I really enjoyed too was like the repertoire course, not just like so I had to take the leader.
Right.
I did a lot of French stuff, so they let me kind of get away with that. But Rini took the French melody class, and it was wonderfully taught by our good friend Martin Neron, who played for a lot of my lessons there. But anyway, so there's just so many different kinds of things. And, if you're someone who is like going through some kind of vocal shift or whatever, and you just don't feel like you want to have to rely on your voice as you would in a regular kind of masters of music, this is a great opportunity, because I was going through a lot and I had to rebuild my voice, and thankfully I did. And a lot of that is because of the knowledge from the people who are on this very episode right now. And so it was really wonderful for me to be able to do that, and also get a degree and then be able to, because I didn't get a master's when I was singing before. I mean, kind of the blessing and curse of a tenor is, as soon as you can get through the role, they put you up on stage and say, great, here you go, here's some money, go do it. And you're like, well, okay, that was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it's like, everybody's so anxious. I remember I'm dealing with 22 and 23-year-olds now who are still babies, but at that point, you're like a master's, they're doing their masters, and I'm like, whoa, just slow down. Just slow. You got so much time to really perfect and understand your throat, and your throat is not finished growing yet. And there's so many kind of, things in there. But one of the greatest things I wanted to say, and then I'll throw it back over to you guys, is just that I think that being a really good teacher, and Kathy, this is all about you and everybody here, but I just know this and learned it because if your teacher can take something that's very complex and break it down and make it sound very approachable, then you're in the hands of a good teacher. And I know that to be true. I know Irini feels that way. And I think everybody who comes there, because these are not, these are complicated things, and the lyrics and everything in the throat. When you blow it up and you look at the diagram and all these, things, especially if it's on the board, it's like, oh, wow, but they're so small. It's such a small, tight little, what is it? What did they say? It's like it's a nickel for a baritone and like a dime for a soprano or something like that. Really incredibly small kinds of things. But we get this huge sound that comes out because of all the ways that we learn how to use
our
it.
resonance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I do think
we will be sure to put a link for the VPI and the MVP in the description of this video. And I unfortunately need to get going, so we need to wrap up. But thank you so much, Jon and Kathy, for joining us. And I think that if anybody were certainly on the fence about whether or not to do one of these programs this episode alone, I think you're going to get a lot of people interested. So
thank you so
I
much.
wish I could sit in on it. Unfortunately, I have to sing this summer. Well, not unfortunately, but at some point, if I'm free in July, I will definitely be attending.
Absolutely. It's super fun. So
anything
we have
else
a good
you want
time
to say before we wrap?
Thank you so much.
Well, of course.
Yeah, and I would just urge anybody, if you're thinking about potentially coming, or if you're thinking about ways that you could grow in your own work, I really urge you just to take the jump. It's 5 days of your life, and you can even we let people go from being in person to being virtually, back and forth. You can also do part of the week synchronously and part of it, from recordings. So, this is a very low risk step, dipping your toe into this world, and you might not know, for all of us, it's changed our lives. So, you never know what might happen. So I urge you just if you're on the fence, just do it.
Yeah.
And you meet a great group of people who will be
Absolutely.
your networking friends.
Well, guys, thank you so much. We're taping this on World Voice Day, right?
World Voice Day.
So it's a wonderful
nice.
timing. It's going to come out a little bit later, but thank you so much. Weston, have a wonderful rehearsal for your Carmina Burana. I know you're going to be amazing.
Yes.
And Kathy and Jon, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to have Kathy back, and we're going to talk about how hormones affect the voice, and that's in adolescence, but also the aging voice and all kinds of things. So stay tuned. And
Menopause,
menopause, all these
Exactly.
things. So
Exactly.
thanks so much,
and
we'll
see you next time.
Thank you.
See you then. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Notes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button.
And join us next week for more behind-the-scenes stories, laughs, and operatic gold coming your way.